Good afternoon. We began saying Mashiv Haruach on Shmini Atzeres, and we go through the first day of Pesach. What happens in a case where one forgets the inclusion of Mashiv Haruach, Umorid Hageshem? The Gemara in Tainis on Daf Gimel, Amud Beis, quotes a statement from Rabbi Chanina that Bimos HaGeshomim, that in the winter months, if one lo Omar Mashiv Haruach, if one forgets to include Mashiv Haruach, ein machzirano, so then one need not repeat. However, lo Omar Morid Hageshem machzirano. So if one forgets the first half of the phrase, that's not a problem. But if one forgets the latter half of the phrase, the Morid Hageshem, the mentioning of God bringing Geshem into the world, then machzirano. So then one must return to the beginning and one must start again for their Shemona Esrei. The machlokas in the Rishonim is what happens if. What exactly does that mean to machzirana? So what does it mean to go back? So one approach is that you go back, that you can recite it at that spot, that you have to just add it in at that point, and then you may continue. But the others is that, no, even from the middle of the bracha, you must go back to the beginning. That, again, one approach is that at any point you must go back to the beginning, and one approach is that, no, if you're in the middle of bracha, if the middle is still of the Mechal Tel Chaim, you can add it then and then continue. The Shulchan Aruch rules that if you remember even in the middle of the bracha, then, if you remember in the middle of the bracha, then you may say it then. But if you remembered only after the conclusion of the bracha, then you have to go back to the beginning of tefillah. Although Mishnah Berurah says that b'diavad, even if one just goes back to Mashiv Haruach or the line of Ata Gibor and continues from that point, that would be sufficient. However, if you remember after the conclusion of the bracha of Mechayeh Misim, then you must go back to the beginning. Although the Shulchan Aruch does suggest that one can just recite Mashiv Haruach at that moment, it does seem to be that one should go back to the beginning after we've at least concluded the bracha and begun the next bracha. However, if one mentioned Morid Hatal, and one does not need to go back. But what happens in a case where one is unsure? If one has a doubt whether or not they said it, so the general rule is we assume it takes 30 days to establish a practice. If one is in doubt, then we assume that they did whatever they were doing until now, until 30 days has elapsed. And therefore, for the first 30 days, if one finds themselves in doubt whether they should have said Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem, then they should in fact go back. But after 30 days, then one may assume that they said it and can continue in that regard. There is a question in the poskim as to whether it's specifically 30 days or only 90 times or 90 times, and that's a matter of debate and too lengthy to get into detail now, but just important to know that is a question, whether one can just repeat it 90 times. In fact, that's why some of the practice of Simchas Torah to recite, to sing it during Hakafos. Obviously, we didn't do any of that, but that is where that custom comes. That there are some that say if you've said it 90 times, then that already changes your status quo, and therefore, if you have a doubt, you can continue. Although some do not agree with that practice, but nonetheless, if one doesn't do that, if before 30 days has lapsed, for sure, then if one has a doubt, they should go back. Have a fantastic day.